All right, we're going to get started now. So yeah, this is how to run your own Disobedient drop. My name is Biola. I'm the national organizer with this here. And yeah, we had a call, another webinar like this last Thursday to sort of go over just sort of like what it is and how to get involved. And this is where we're going to dive into more of the nuts and bolts of exactly how to do it, what to look out for, we'll go over a lot of different parts to it. Special thanks to the folks at Stop Trump Care, where a lot of this content comes from. And also special thanks because yesterday a lot of folks helped us with this huge win against Trump Care by sitting in on multiple legislators' office. Actually, the two who changed their minds were, I think, Caputo and Murkowski, and they were both senators that folks sat in on yesterday who later changed their vote on the Republican health care bill. So we have a really recent example of how important doing civil disobedience is, especially in this time when so much is at stake. So yeah, this is a brief agenda. The call shouldn't go over an hour. So yeah, we're going to go over nonviolent discipline, why it's important, what it is, then how to get started, how to start putting together your team, how to mobilize, what the roles are that each person should have, going over your action scenario, executing your action, contingencies for if different things happen, maybe you do get, maybe the cops come quickly and you get arrested or not, what to do then, some brief legal information, and then I will stop and take some questions. So yeah, it's super critical that we maintain nonviolent discipline at all times in this process. This means no use of violence or the threat of violence by words, by actions, toward anyone that you encounter. Why this is so important is because nonviolent discipline is what gives our movements the moral high ground, and therefore it makes our actions compelling to the public, and it makes people want to be involved and be a part of the struggle. So breaks in this fundamentally undermine our movement and our mission. And if you were on the call last week, you remember both of these slides. But yeah, when someone decides to face arrest, their decision has the effect of mobilizing not just them, but the communities of people closest to them. And this is a photo from the Nashville sit-ins in 1960. Here it says the local black community began to unite behind the students who were engaging in the sit-in. Black merchants supplied food to those in jail. Homeowners put up property for bail money. And parents who were worried that arrest records could hurt their children's future, and they feared for the safety of their children. They turned to the power of their own pocketbook, launching an economic boycott in support of the sit-in. So again, this illuminates how important it is we maintain nonviolent discipline, because our actions do not just affect us, they affect other people, they affect the communities we're trying to mobilize, and by keeping nonviolent discipline, it increases the likelihood of people coming to join us, which is super important if we want to, build mass-scale movements. So yeah, how do we do this? Planning the sit-in can be super simple. All you need to do is connect with your team in person or online. Probably in person would be best, especially when you want to act out your scenario so you have a sense in real time, and also just practicing songs or chants. You want to agree on the action roles. You want to go over your action scenarios, and then you want to do your sit-in. So yeah, now we're going to talk about how to mobilize people for your sit-in. So anyone can be an organizer. All it takes to mobilize mobilize others is conviction to the cause and to the greater good, and being dedicated and following through. So it's totally fine if you start small and build from there. You can get your whole community there from the get-go. That's great. And here are some suggestions for how to mobilize. Tap into your network. Write down, an easy first step is to write down the names of 30 people you know who you think would be interested in showing up. It could be your family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, members of clubs or organizations. If you're part of a faith community, that's also great. If you use Facebook or email, feel free to use those tools to reach out to people. And then after you've gotten the people who, you have relationships with already, then it also makes sense to reach out to prominent leaders in your community, people like faith leaders, politically active individuals, and people who are part of, clubs or groups that you know of or are part of. And then what you want to do is, from there, get your messaging down and prepare your pitch. So this is where you create talking points to help keep your message focused, clear, and concise. And then after that's done, what you want to do is follow up on the logistics. So call people who signed up to volunteer. Make sure they're clear about where the event is, how they're getting there. Is there any coordination of transportation that they can do for the larger group? That's super, super important. Logistics is always super, super important to making sure that this goes smoothly, so it's definitely not a step that you want to skip out on. And then finally, get the word out. Put your flyers all across the town. Share the event on all your social media channels. Just do as much promotion as you can to get people to come to your action. And then for your team, it's super important to be clear. So the next step in putting together a sit-in is agreeing on action roles. This one is super, super critical. So your team needs to make the distinction between who is willing to risk arrest and who won't. You need at least one person not to risk arrest so that they can act as jail support. You could also need people to do live streaming and taking photos, and then also, if need be, have people with leaflets and pamphlets for people who are passing by, so that they have more information on what's happening at the event. Another role you're going to need is an action leader, and this is the person responsible for the action's overall program and live execution. So they are the ones who you'd want to initiate the beginning of the action and organize the physical arrangement of the action, give spokespeople and chant leaders their cues for starting their statements and chants, and make any real-time, on-the-ground technical decisions. So like maybe relocating people to another part of the office or locking arms with each other. Things like that you're going to want an action leader for. Also going to need jail support. Jail support is super, super important. And they're going to be the person who's going to be taking down everyone's personal information, liaising with the police department and legal support following the action, and coordinating the meeting and pickup of team members once they're released from custody. So they're the person who is going to be there for you if you decide to take a rest when you get out. So it's a super, super important job. And you're also going to need someone who can talk to the police. So that's the police liaison. They're going to be talking to the police during the action and representing the team to any police or security personnel. They're the ones who should take the initiative to talk to the police, and so that no one else has to. So if the police should approach anyone about like what the action is going on, you can just tell them to refer to so and so because they're the police liaison. And the person in this role should approach any and all law enforcement with a sense of calmness, confidence, and speaking to them respectfully. A fun one is chant leaders. These are the people who start and lead chants and songs. So this is something that you want to prepare and practice ahead of time, and make sure everyone knows both the words and the lyrics, and also the beat, so that everything can be together and coherent. And if possible, and if need be, audio recordings that you just have with you ahead of time. Another super important role is the role of spokesperson. So that's the role for people who will read or recite the official statement on behalf of the entire team, presenting the collective demand and explaining why they're there taking action. So these statements should be short and to the point so that they're easy to remember and to recite in what might be a stressful situation. So 1 to 2 minutes should be more than enough. People typically should be able to make some connection about why they're personally called to this action. And it'd be super helpful to have the statement typed on their phone so you have it just as a resource. And it should be someone who is willing to take a rest as well. Another super important role is a live streamer. So this is the person who is, on Facebook Live as it happens, which allows people to tune in and watch while it's happening, and then also act after the fact. And you can also have this on Twitter or other avenues. A few good tips about live streaming. One is bring a backup charger. This is not something you want to forget to bring because especially with Facebook Live, it'll eat your battery before you knew it. So you definitely want to make sure you have a backup charger because you're definitely going to need it. Another tip for while you're live streaming is make sure that in the and this might be something you want to have copied in your notes already, so you can just copy paste it into the Facebook description of why you're there so that it's already there and you don't have to waste time trying to type it. Another tip is make sure the orientation of your phone is correct for Facebook Live so that people aren't commenting in the comment section great action, but can you please tilt your screen because people have to tip their head over. So it's little things like that. And then also try to remember to also state where and why you're at this action because people are going to be tuning in. People only stay on Facebook Live not very long, so they're going to be if it's picking up steam, a lot of new people joining. So it's helpful to just say why you're there every couple of minutes, just so people know what's going on. So now we're going to going over the action scenario. So ideally you're going to meet up at least an hour ahead of time by where your senator's offices are located. Ideally, it'd be great if you could meet up a lot earlier and just so you can get to introduce yourselves to each other, make sure people know who you are in practice, and so people can read through their statements. But yeah, you definitely want to meet up sufficiently before an action just to make sure that people know each other and feel confident about the steps y'all are about to take. And the execution. So yeah, once you're all ready, at the guidance of your chant leader, you go and you walk to your senator's office as a group and ask to speak with the senator. If they refuse, you can just sit on the floor with making sure the spokesperson is sort of opposite the live streamer. And you can be silent, or you can sing, or you can chant. And then, your spokesperson will sort of read and recite the statements. This is where, and afterwards you can start chanting. And you're sort of there in your sit-in, taking up space in the legislator's office and making your presence known. And then what to do when law enforcement arrives at your sit-in. So when this happens, this is when the police liaison takes the initiative and introduces themselves, saying why they're there and that the actions y'all are taking are 100% nonviolent. And when police give an official warning, this is when anyone who is unwilling to take arrest should leave immediately. And if you are willing to risk arrest, then that's where that's when you remain seated. Super important, do not proactively make physical contact with any police officer. So any unwanted touching can technically be considered assault on an officer, which is it's a pretty bad charge. You really just don't want to do that. And then, once you're placed on arrest, just comply with all law enforcement directives, and then make sure that the jail support volunteers have your information so that they can track your progress, and make sure, and then they'll be able to meet you upon your release. So now we're going to go over the contingencies. So one scenario is if you can't even get into the office. So sometimes things don't always go according to plan, and if you can't actually get into your senator's office, just try to get as far as you can into the building and hold your sit-in at that location. For example, this could be a hallway outside of the office or in the opening lobby. This actually happened to me when I was in college. I tried to occupy the president's office, and we didn't get inside. What we ended up doing was linking arms outside the office, and this allowed us to get the attention of the entire hallway at the time. So it can be just as effective, even if you don't necessarily hit the mark you had set out. Try to just position yourself in a way that disrupts the flow of foot traffic, and don't go someplace that no one ever goes to. So try not to be in an obscure area within the building. And and similar to what I did, if you can't get into the building at all, you could have your sit-in as a blockade in front of the entrance. And try to stay as long as possible. Also, just to note, the likelihood they will arrest you may decrease if you don't actually gain access. So that's just a good thing to know. So another scenario is if there are no immediate arrests. Let's say you gain entrance to the office or another space, but they don't move to arrest you. So this means you should know that you might be there a long time, possibly even overnight. What's powerful about office occupations is that they create a really powerful narrative in the media and social media about the commitment and the sacrifice of the protesters, and also it sort of highlights the unwillingness of our targets to be responsive to our demands. So most will end within a day, but some may stretch for multiple days. So make sure you have your batteries charged or your chargers, so that you can keep make sure people can still see through your live streams, through your photos, through your tweets what's going on, so people don't forget that it's happening. But you could conceivably be there for a significant period of time. Okay, so for people who are deciding to risk arrest, here are a couple of do's and don'ts. What you definitely want to do is once you're being arrested, cooperate with police orders and directives. Don't resist arrest or touch a police officer who didn't initiate contact. You don't want an assault on an officer charge. Make sure you have your official state or government ID on you while you're there. That one is super, super important. Don't bring purses, backpacks, or valuables to the action at all. Nothing you want to get lost in processing. Don't have it on you. You don't need that much stuff. What you will need, though, is wearing layers, because jails can be either hot or really cold, and you might not be able to bring in anything else. You may stay overnight. That is definitely a possibility. So you want to make sure that you are you're wearing comfortable clothes for different types of weather. And if you have any medications that you need to take, you might be sent to a hospital to have those administered. So that's just something to keep in mind, because it might delay your release a bit. So, we want to give you just a basic understanding of what you'll need as you're risking arrest and committing civil disobedience. But I'm not a lawyer, and this isn't none of the following should be considered legal advice or replacement for legal advice. If you want resources, there is the National Lawyers Guild, which is a nationwide resource for legal support. And they have chapters in every region and an extensive database of pro bono attorneys. They also offer legal support hotlines and legal observers when you're planning an action that risks arrest. So if you want to learn more, you can visit nlg.org/MASS, MASS, Defense Committee. What people often do is, after they've connected with a representative from a National Lawyers Guild, they often have the local phone number, Sharpies on their arms, so that people, once they are being processed, they know exactly who to call. So that's another thing you also definitely should consider. And also the American Civil Liberties Union chapter, they also might have legal observers and legal support hotlines. So you can visit aclu.org/affiliates for info on that. You may know local attorneys, folks who are willing to offer up their services as well. So definitely tap into those networks, or if you have any old Occupy networks, it's definitely now's the time to definitely start making those connections. So another thing to note is those who are risking arrest might actually incur minor fees. They're generally less than $100 if arrested. So folks should really try to practice solidarity and ensure that cost isn't a barrier to anyone's participation. So that's where you want to, maybe have a collective bail fund, essentially. It's definitely something to talk about with your group and try to figure out a way to make possible, so we can have more people who can be a part of the movement and making it more accessible. And being arrested for nonviolent civil disobedience is typically a minor offense. In some cases, no charges are ever filed. And in others, charges are filed but often dropped after an arraignment. So generally only a tiny fraction of nonviolent actions have resulted in charges sticking. That is another thing to note. It's also important, though, to consider the disparity of risk among people when planning your actions. There are many different factors that affect this: race, gender, age, ability, income, whether you have kids or dependents. All of this may affect your level of risk. and some people may have special circumstances that could potentially have direct legal consequences. Like some people may be undocumented or have an outstanding warrant or an existing felony that will make it that them participating puts that at higher risk. And while people who have elevated risk levels, can and should be able to participate in civil disobedience if they feel so moved, we just want to make sure that people understand their own risk. So yeah, we also want to not to be super prescriptive, and saying like and no one who's undocumented can engage in civil disobedience, because that's just not true. We've seen that in the past with and currently with the undocumented movement, where people who sat in risking deportation in order to push for things like DACA. So yeah, what it really means is making sure that we're supporting each other and supporting folks who have higher risk. People need to know that they will feel supported, and that's what I think we really want to make sure we're keeping in mind when we're planning civil disobedience with folks from all over, and making sure we have wide participation. Cool. So now I'm going to break for questions. If you have a question, please press the number 2, and I will call on you in the order that I see the number 2. What's your question?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I joined a little bit late, so I'm not going to ask you to, cover things that I missed in the first 20 minutes or so. But I do have a question about the point of, attending these events and deciding that you're not going to go for the arrest part of it. What do you do? Do you just leave? That's it? Game over for the time being?
You mean as a group or individually?
As an individual.
Oh, well, you could always, I think that people who are doing jail support could always use more support. So you could probably link up with the person who signed up to do that. You could, you could probably do that, or if there are people outside who are, interested in learning more, it might be a good idea to have pamphlets and be talking to people. That's another way to engage. If you won't, in a way that means you won't be arrested, but you're still, you're still there and a part of spreading the word about what's going on.
Okay. All right. That's good. In case I'm sure a number of people will go as far as risking arrest and so on, and others won't, and that's fine. But knowing that there's some other additional way to contribute if you decide you're not going to go, for the full Monty of arrest, sticking around, I guess, maybe outside the area or what have you, is a viable option, I believe. Do we need to make up our own pamphlets, or will there be pamphlets available for us to distribute, or what part of that?
I think it depends on what you're sitting in for, and what you're protesting. Because I think it all depends on that. Which, based on your issue, there's definitely resources that we could find to help you put together a pamphlet, and it might be something that's already existing. So that's why it's not it's really based on like what people feel passionate about acting on. Less so, telling y'all to specifically protest something specific.
Okay. So, for example, if, we go to, or, our senator's local office and we decide to, continue our resistance outside, not risking arrest, if the protest is originally for one purpose, say, the defeat of Trump care, is that the only issue that, we kind of want to focus on for that particular event? Or are you saying that there are other things that we can, sort of spread the news about to others who may be in the area?
I think for the purposes of one action, you want to keep it more singularly focused, just so that the messaging is very clear and concise, especially if there's going to be media. So I'd say, just if you're having it all around one thing,
right.
That
makes sense. Okay, so whatever the point of the particular rally is, stay focused on that. Externally, if you, that makes sense. We want to make sure we maintain the focus on what we're there for to begin with. Alrighty, well, I think that's kind of all the questions I had to ask. So, and thanks for the info.
No problem. All right, I will take another question. I have Tammy. Tammy, you're on.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, what if you live in a very red state, very rural state, and there are no groups around to join to do this? How do we go about trying to link up with people of like mind?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's kind of what earlier when I talked about, it's just like finding friends, which I don't know. Like, do you feel like you have like a couple of people, or it's just you?
Well, right now it's just me and my daughter, and I'm disabled, so I don't get out very much to other people. And this is an extremely red state.
I think, if you don't, I'm not sure if, in terms of like, if you don't know, like, any other, like, I would say try to research if there were any other groups that sort of had, like, something similar, and try to reach out to them. It might be further away, but maybe it could be, they can find ways to support, and like helping you like feel like you have some support in reaching out to folks who you know in your neighborhood aren't necessarily with you, but like can help you more locally figure out a way to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I was also going to say, do you have like access to like the like a high-speed internet?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's also, seeing out community, like kind of what we're doing here, could also just be helpful to, not just feel so isolated as well, in addition to trying to find more like local support.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So we have Peggy, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know how to unmute. Okay. Do we notify the media if we're planning an event?
Huh?
Do we notify the media when we're planning an event?
Yeah, I'd say you definitely want to have like a press I would say have like a press conference. Say you're having a press conference or a rally. You don't need to necessarily tell them that you're having a sit-in. That would be in the like the advice. The thing you send before the action can be like you're having a press conference, and then while it's happening, you should send something out being like, people are sitting in now, come to this location, and have it all there. Just so I guess like police aren't super tipped off that someone's going to do a sit-in and can block your entrance. But you definitely want press there.
Okay, and I live in a red state too, but luckily I'm in a pretty heavily populated area, and I think even being able to make phone calls and to be a part of the movement is really important. I'm really excited about being able to participate in a number of different ways, and I appreciate this call because it gives me some ideas.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. It's really great to have.
Thank you.
Know that so many folks out here, really are ready to step up and help.
What's so important?
Yeah. Awesome. So I have one more question for folks. We have a Slack channel, which is kind of it's just like a communications portal where people kind of can communicate with each other. If you're interested in joining, could you indicate by hitting the letter 3 so that I know, and then from there we can send you an invite to the Slack channel? Awesome. I'm just writing it all down.
Find it.
Awesome. All right, I got it. Cool. So yeah, we are also on Facebook. We have a Facebook like page called Resist Here. So if you're interested in being just seeing the content from that, you could always go there to like the page. And then this, if folks who can't see it, there's another link that I put up that has an action toolkit, which has a lot of different resources for how to put together your own action that you can download and use. And so the link to that is resisthere.org/portfolio/action-toolkit. So if you should check that out if you're interested in just some more concrete tools to use. But yeah, that about wraps us up. Thank you all for making the time to get on the call. And yeah, I hope to follow up with y'all soon with more info, and definitely look forward to talking to the folks who indicated they're interested on Slack.
Okay.